Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, I want to talk about power from a yin and yang perspective, how we can feel our most powerful and what we can do to reinforce that feeling for each other. But first, I have a quick announcement, and that is that the doors for my next round of Level Up Your Life are now open. This is my Healthy Habits Bootcamp, or Self-Care Essential Habits of Self-Respect support group, which changes lives in the sense that people actually start doing the things that they've previously just been thinking about, whether that is establishing a meditation practice or eating better, or getting more sleep, or setting boundaries around what makes you come alive. All these things you can get support for in Level Up. Head to brodywelch.com/level-up to learn more. Okay, now on to this discussion of power from a yin and yang perspective. So power connotes the ability to do something, the ability to influence or direct other people. It also has to do with strength and authority. So there is kind of a yin and a yang dimension to it. The yang dimension being the more masculine, kind of power over, direct influence or control or force or might. And in our culture, probably the most obvious symbol of this kind of power is money, in that money buys influence and access. It opens doors, it makes more experiences possible, and it can be used to amplify whatever message you have. Whether it's your favorite brand buying your attention on social media, or whether it's corporations buying our congressional leaders. Really, the top 0.1%, not the 1%, but the 0.1% own about 20% of all the nation's wealth, which is roughly the same as the entire bottom 90%. This is according to Elizabeth Warren, who would like to be taxing the wealth of billionaires to redistribute some of that power around. So clearly, whether or not we as a society have enough money to fund our schools, enough money to perhaps provide healthcare or house people, whether or not these are values that we even think our society should adopt, who has the say in that is a masculine form of power. The other things that grant power and status in our society are, of course, being male, being white, being able-bodied, straight, cisgendered, English-speaking, and thin. Of course, there are other power groups, but these are mostly what I think of. And these are characteristics that allow some human beings the ability to move through our society with a certain sense of ease and privilege based on the presumption of their capability. And members of these dominant groups also are more likely to be in a position of shaping the culture and making the decisions that become the laws and social norms of our society. If we just look at race and gender, in our elected officials in the United States, 87% are male and 88% are white. So white males are making the decisions for the rest of the country, and also are disproportionately, overwhelmingly determining what kinds of TV and movies are getting produced, what news is getting reported, whose stories are worthy of being told, and how those stories are told. So all of this is power in a very real yang sense, the ability to do things, the ability to call the shots, the ability to influence people, and to really shape an entire society. I just got back from Atlanta for the She Podcast Live conference, where 100% of the speakers were women, 40% were women of color and or LGBTQ. And it was so refreshing to be in that kind of environment where there was a presumption of capability and that really the whole conference would be strengthened by a diversity of voices. Because indeed, the whole point of the conference was to help empower women to share their voices, own their power, and thus have an impact on the world. So I was literally given a microphone and a time on the schedule. So external forms of power, like here's time, here's literally an amplifier for your voice. But before the talk, I was not feeling particularly powerful. I changed my clothes at least 5 times as I was kind of going through an imposter syndrome, like just kind of forgetting who I was and trying to meet this external standard of how I felt I needed to look in order to be taken seriously. But thankfully, that was a short-lived exercise. I remembered why I was there, which is much more about empowering other people and less about the greatness of my own ego. So it actually became really easy to stand up there with presence and sincerity and speak from my heart to help other women take care of themselves and show up for themselves in their shows for the long haul. Because there is this feedback loop between how we take care of ourselves and how we end up feeling. There's that sort of yin and yang of self-confidence. From a Chinese medical perspective, our power in the sense of this masculine idea of our ability to exert our will in the world is rooted in our kidneys. But of course, in Chinese medicine, all strong yang depends on strong yin. And so this power that comes from the kidneys that moves through having the vision and the courage, which is in the wood element, to then become manifest, as it is in the fire element, is linked with our innate gifts and our essential essence. Just like in yoga, the outward expression of a posture comes from our alignment. Like if we're stacking our bones, our muscles don't have to work so hard. If our core is engaged and we're breathing deeply, we have a lot more access to power of staying in the pose to do something hard like crow. And the same thing is true in the world. The outward stuff that we can effort towards and try to develop a bigger platform and try to extend our influence and create kind of this outer sense of power, deepening our mastery of subjects we care about, it's all going to be that much more powerful if it's aligned with who we are on the inside. So, for example, I do this podcast because I have a message that I deeply care about. I want to help you take care of yourself. And I'm choosing podcasting as a way of getting this message out because it feels much more in alignment to me than, say, growing an Instagram following where the focus is all about how it looks on the outside. It's also a big reason why I share a lot of my own struggles with you on the podcast, because I think that it's important to be authentic and not show up as this version of perfect or overly shiny, because that's not real. And that's not the kind of culture that I cultivate in my group programs, where sharing the stuff that's hard and being honest about what's not working is absolutely vital in order to be unstuck. But it requires a different kind of power, a power from within. And just as that yang form of power is strengthened by an internal alignment, when we are in touch with this yin or feminine form of power, it actually transforms the world around us as well. To illustrate this, I wanted to share a little bit of a feminist icon who I deeply respect, Audre Lorde, whose work I was originally exposed to, I think when I was about 17 and doing a research paper on the feminist movement back in high school. And just, I don't know if you've had that experience of reading a book that you read a long time ago, picking it up off the shelf and having it strike you totally differently because you're at a different place in your life. This was me with Audre Lorde's uses of the erotic, which I highly recommend watching on YouTube. You can watch her reading from it. It's awesome. We'll have a link in the show notes. But to unpack this a bit, the erotic, as she's describing it, is a feminine source of power that is rooted in love and connected to how acutely and fully we feel in the doing. And she's using the term erotic not in the sense of getting it on and sex and that kind of eroticism, but rooted in the Greek god of love, right? So the idea of eros, love, and she describes that as distinct from the pornographic, which is just sensation without this feeling or infused with feeling. So to quote from Audre Lorde, she says, "When we live outside ourselves," and by that, I mean on external directives only, rather than from our own internal knowledge and needs. When we live away from those erotic guides from within ourselves, then our lives are limited by external and alien forms. We conform to the needs of a structure that is not based on human need, let alone in individuals. She's talking about capitalism here. But when we begin to live from within outward, in touch with the power of the erotic within ourselves, and allowing that power to inform and illuminate our actions upon the world around us, then we begin to be responsible to ourselves in the deepest sense. For as we begin to recognize our deepest feelings, we begin to give up, of necessity, being satisfied with suffering and self-negation and with the numbness, which so often seems like the only alternative in our society. End quote. Is that powerful or what? She's saying we can either numb out self-negation, numbness, or tune way, way in. Tune into what? Tune into this powerful life force that exists in this inherently female plane. To pay attention to how acutely we feel in the doing. She writes that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So she's saying not only is self-care not selfish, it's actually essential, and it is an act of political power, because you are rejecting what is expected of you and claiming living your life according to your own values and how good something feels to you. So to me, this comes down to the fact that the basic things that our bodies are telling us, like get up and stretch, or drink a glass of water, or go out and be by the trees, these basic things that are calling from within us to do, that our bodies and souls are leading us towards, anytime we override that, we are telling ourselves we don't matter. But by honoring it and giving that a place of importance, we first of all, demonstrate to ourselves, but also to each other, that it's okay to do that, and thereby creating the world that we want to live in. In Taoism, there is a sense of personal power that is translated as de, which de has a lot of connotations. I think there's like 20 definitions ranging from virtue to inherent character or integrity. But inner strength and inner power has a lot to do with it. And that the fullness of your de, how completely in harmony with your original nature you are, is the central idea of Taoism. So the idea is that you want to let the universe, the way, express through you. And in order to do that, it requires a certain amount of don't give a shit attitude towards what the culture is telling you to pay attention to. And in Chinese medicine, our consciousness has to recognize our essence in order for us to be doing our unique purpose. So the heart, which houses the Shen, or the consciousness, needs to look down upon the water element, the kidneys, where the essence lives, and see it so that we can then live in accordance with that in our daily lives. And the emissary between fire and water is the metal element, which houses the Po, or the aspect of the soul that's connected to the body, and which is basically our animal instincts and our intuition. So this idea that paying attention to that can help us get back in touch with our essence. And getting in touch with that power that just shows up whenever you do, that's kind of innate, that is another form of yin power. So this kind of power that just exists inside of each of us in a unique way. So you know how some people can just walk into a room and immediately everyone is relaxed, or people who just naturally have the power to engender a feeling of safety around them, that this is part of just who we are. You can't really separate it. And as Maya Angelou put it, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And here she's speaking to the power of our presence, the power of the kind of energy that we show up with, which is really discounted. When we think about kind of like why it's important to have these healthy habits, it's often couched in the form of, well, because you'll get more done or you'll be more productive. And even I certainly have, that's been appealing to me, and it's been a message that I've shared, because you really can, once you don't have to figure out when you're working out or when you're meditating, it just happens automatically, and you don't have to think about it, and you free up your energy for the other things in your life that deserve more of your attention. But even more importantly, how we take care of ourselves reflects back on the energy that we show up with. And I'm assuming that if you're listening to this podcast, you're someone who believes that our ability to connect to each other, our relationships, the people in our lives who we deeply care for are the relationships that matter most, and that we want to show up as our best selves, not only so that we can feel good, but because that allows us to be present and patient and kind and compassionate with the other people in our lives. So yes, self-care is, as Audre Lorde puts it, a political act, but it's also an act of nurturing our relationships. And when you're in touch with your own uniqueness and feel confident enough to express it, that is your yin power supporting your yang power. And you can further that power when you're around other people who amplify how connected you feel and how confident you feel with your own essence. So it helps to be in an environment where your original nature is seen and valued and appreciated. Because of course, our environment shapes who we are. We are influencing each other all the time. So if everyone around you values sports, say, and you're an artist, it might be helpful for you to maybe spend more time with people who value art like you do. At She Podcast Live, I looked around at a lot of the people that I've only been connected with on the internet and realized that I would likely not be nearly as far in this journey without the support of other people that I'm connected with online doing the same things. I know it would have been way harder to get through acupuncture school without my study buddies, where we would make up songs to remember the ingredients of our hundreds of herb formulas that we were supposed to memorize. I know it would be way harder to have an online business and an online coaching practice if I wasn't regularly in touch with other health experts who were doing a similar thing and supporting each other and sharing what I've learned in my journey. While I was in Atlanta, I also went to the Pride Parade, which is a huge example of people coming together, in the rain no less, to celebrate each other and celebrate being seen for who we are, for wherever we are on the sexual orientation and gender identity and expression spectrum. And despite the sogginess of it all, there was some really awesome energy there. There is a power to being around people who are going through something similar. And this is one of the reasons why I love running my Level Up group coaching program, because everyone there is trying to do something hard, something that they don't currently have support there for in their daily lives. And everyone there is a mirror and an inspiration for everyone else. And that's true whether we're celebrating each other's wins for the week, like I meditated for 5 minutes, yay, or problem solving where someone is stuck on being able to eat dinner before 7 o'clock or whatever it is. Last month, I was at a conference where Mark Nepo, the poet, was talking about the oldest living organism on the planet, which is apparently this grove of aspen trees in Utah. So above ground, it looks like it's these separate trees, but the root system is all connected underground. And it's been continuously alive for 80,000 years. And when one tree is struggling at the root level, the other pieces of the root system will send nutrients. And I just loved that, because really it is a model for humanity and for power, that we're individuals, but my freedom is bound to your freedom and your freedom is bound to my freedom. And so the more that we can do to, first of all, lift each other up, but do so from a place of grounding in what matters most, we are giving each other permission to be who we really are, to live from the inside out, in touch with the erotic, as Audre Lorde might put it. So let's remind ourselves of our inherent power. Let's remind someone that you know of a gift that can't help but be there when this person is in your presence. Let's do what we can to create the power that comes from aligning with our true nature and expressing that outwardly. Let's also be brave enough to live our values and in touch with the feminine source of power that comes from listening inwardly. And let's also get out there and vote and change the external world as well. So thanks for listening today. I'd also like to invite you to join Level Up Your Life, the January round. There is a big discount for the first 5 people to enroll. So head over to brodywelch.com and check it out. As always, thank you so much for spending this time with me. It's a real honor and privilege, and I don't take it for granted. Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.